folks, how's your reading? Now, I mentioned this book a while back in another video. I just happen to have it right here because I brought it in specially. So I mentioned it in Leave the Girls Behind by Jacqueline Bublitz. This one is The Cane by Maryrose Cuskelly. And if you watch my video on Leave the Girls Behind, you will know that I bought this for nothing. I just went into QBD Books in Parramatta, asked for a recommendation. Oh, excuse me, no romance, local author or Indigenous, and I got this. The lovely lady recommended this for me. Good book, bit of a challenge to read because of the topic. And she also said to me, this book is free if you want it, and it says promotional copy exclusive to QBD, not for resale. See, I'll just show you. That's what it says there on the bottom. It's very shiny. And the receipt, which I don't know if it's worthwhile showing you because but you can actually see the zero. Oh, well, that might have been worthwhile. So anyway, having read both books, I thought I should probably talk about them. I talked about Leave the Girls Behind by Jacqueline Bublitz in a previous video. And The Cane. Now, Books and Publishing say it's reminiscent of Jane Harper's The Dry and Chris Hammer's Scrublands. Now, I've read Jane Harper's The Dry. It is a brilliant book. And yes, I see the similarities. This book, I love this three-sentence thing. Yep, they're all full stops. One missing girl, no suspects, a town about to ignite. And that's ignite in more ways than one. Why? Because, and this is where I loved, one of the things I loved about this book, is we learn about the sugarcane and how it grows, and that before you can harvest it, you actually need to fire it. So you run some fire through it. And that is problematic in Australia. I haven't told you where this is located. So Maryrose Cuskelly is Australian, I think from Queensland. Now, Queensland is, the area of Queensland this is set in is sugarcane country. And that is problematic in and of itself because many people were taken from their home islands in, I think, Vanuatu, although I can't remember if it was called Vanuatu at that point, and brought to Australia specifically to run the sugarcane. Some of them came sort of willingly, others were kidnapped, and it was called blackbirding. And actually blackbirding is mentioned in this. And the people who came, they're called Kanakas, or some other pronunciation. And so I loved it for that. But we also get to see how the town can ignite, not just the sugarcane, and there you see nice red. It's orange in here, and it's red in the camera. Anyway, you can see the sugarcane needs to be ignited in order to harvest it, and that is detailed throughout the book. You see lots of little bits of references to it, and how it's hard if you put it off, but they have to put it off because a girl has gone missing. She's 16, I think, and she went to go babysitting and never made it. And we don't find out because it's a detective. I think it's a detective. So we don't find out until really late in the book that no, I didn't want to say that, where she's gone and what's happened to her. What you get in here is all the sexism and all the racism of the 1970s, because yes, it's set in the 1970s. And I had a piece, yes, see, bookmark. I like to use these old business cards because generally they're blank on the back until, put up that way, until I use them for writing in. So bookmark, and then I can if I'm reading and I want to remember something, I put it on the back. So there was a lot of, so this is the 1970s in Queensland. In Melbourne, we talk about Queensland as being rather backwards, and it's not a nice thing to say, and politically they were for a long time, and I'm not going to go into the politics of that because I do not understand politics. But to say, I would expect sexism and racism from there. Especially in the 1970s. That's a long time ago. There was a lot more sexism, a lot more racism, a lot more, I was about to say a lot more anti-Semitism, but I think there's more anti-Semitism now than there used to be back in the 70s. Things that we know now that we thought were normal then was to put butter on burns. So someone is burnt. I've forgotten where. I could look it up. I won't, but she's burnt. And people say, put butter on it. It'll help. And it will not. It will make things worse because butter is what you fry stuff in the frying pan. So if you've got a burn on your arm and you put butter on it, you will be in much more pain, and it will not stop it burning. It will make it worse. So the young female police officer, who I quite like, she tells her to put cold water on it, which is great. Really good. I have, looking to show you the scar, but I have no scar because I burnt myself, splashed myself with some hot oil, and it was really quite badly burnt, and I didn't put butter on it. I very carefully didn't put butter on it. I put it under cold water. I didn't put it under cold water for long enough. You put it under cold water, running cold water for 20 minutes. I didn't, because I had to finish cooking. I did get my kids to help with the meal, but I'm so much faster at cutting things up than they are. So I finished. We finished stuff, the three of us, and I kept on going from cold water to an ice pack to cold water. I think it was this one. It was here. I'm not sure. Anyway, cold water to an ice pack. The ice pack was wrong, and I knew that. But then I ended up buying some gel stuff at the chemist the next day, and I put that on, and that really helps. Because what you want to do is you want to cool it down, because until you can cool that area down, it's still burning. Okay? It's still burning. The skin is still burning and getting worse and worse and worse. So get the cold on it as soon as you can. Not ice. Don't do what I did. Cold water, running from the tap. Cool water. For 20 minutes, because that will take the heat out of it and reduce the pain. I can't for the life of me remember what this gel was, but it was a clear gel, and I put it on several times a day, and that helped to cool things down and helped start the healing process. And after 3 or 4 days, I then put vitamin E cream on, and that all helped, so much so that I can't actually remember. It was about here, and it was bleeding. It was that bad. There's no scarring. I think it was here. There's nothing there. The other thing I could have used, not in the first instance, but after it started to heal a little bit, is aloe vera gel. And I've since got a bottle of aloe vera gel in the fridge. So it keeps it nice and cool, so I'll get it on and it'll relieve the heat and whatever. Anyway, all of that to say, back in the 1970s, we believed that you should put butter on burns. I don't remember if I ever used butter on burns. I don't remember if I got burnt. I do have a memory way back when I was very young. We had an indoor fire, call it a fire. It wasn't a fire. I'm not talking about in the fire fire to keep the house warm. I'm talking about, it was about that wide opening, and you put bricks in, you put paper, bricks and wood and whatever to light them and get them going, and that would then heat up the water in the pipes and warm up the house. But it would also be good for cooking. The stove. Oven? It wasn't an oven. Anyway, I put in some paper, and I was too young and too scared of the flames that were already there, and I put in some newspaper to try and get rid of it, and it fell out. Dad came very quickly, thank goodness, and stamped it all out with his in his slippers. I don't remember that little machine being there much longer after that. My parents did a lot of renovations. I could count 6. And there's, I think, one missing that I don't actually remember because it's too early, too before my time. So anyway, all of that because Maryrose Cuskelly wrote about butter on burns. I was going to bring in a terry toweling hat to show you, but I didn't. So that's really very clever, because they mention a terry toweling hat. Because back in the 70s, you didn't know about sun. You had no idea about sun. There's other things we didn't know about, like smoking. No one knew back in the 70s, except maybe the cigarette manufacturers, that smoking was bad for you, and that you could get secondary smoking from other people's clothes. So when I was very young, before 19, no, I'm not going to say when I was very young. I'm not going to give you a year. I'm 18. Back when I was very, very young, no one understood, and my dad smoked, and I was off school with asthma a lot. No one got the connection, and I was on a new medication called Intel, which was a preventer, which I've seen mentioned in a book by Sophie Neville. I don't remember the title of it. I'm going to come back around eventually to where I started. Sophie Neville played Titty in the 1970s TV series film. I think it's a film, 1970 film, 1970s. I can't remember the exact year. Film of Arthur Ranson's book, Amazons, Swallows and Amazons. I'll get the words in the right order. Swallows and Amazons. Love that book. I should find it on my shelves and actually do a piece to camera about that. Wonderful childhood with books like that. And she wrote a book about the behind the scenes, what it was like growing up filming this absolutely fantastic movie from this even better book. And she wrote about, I think in her afterword, about someone in her family who invented Intel. And I got all excited because I used to take Intel because I had asthma. And so anyway, because I had asthma a lot and I couldn't go to school, and Mum couldn't always be home to look after me because she had to work too. She was a teacher, and I couldn't always go into her classroom and sit with her. I was too young for that. And Dad would take me to the surgery. He was a dentist. And he would sit me in the office on a little stool, which I now have sitting in front of my to be read pile. It's a really good stool. I use it frequently. I've also fallen off it a couple of times, and I don't understand why, because it's a really solid stool, solid wood. Very well made by the gentleman who Dad bought his practice, his dental practice. And apparently this guy was short, and so he made it this stool. It's beautifully made. We're talking 1950s, made before the 1950s. So it's probably almost 100 years old. Anyway, so I used to sit on that in Dad's office, and Dad would come in between patients and he'd have a cigarette. And they were roll-your-owns, I think drum, maybe. This is not an advertisement. And we didn't know the link between asthma and smoking at those days. Few years later, he went into the hospital and had a coronary bypass and stopped smoking. Yes, all at the one time. He had the withdrawals probably while he was medicated under anaesthetic or morphine or whatever painkillers they gave him. So that was interesting. I don't actually remember most of that time, but anyway, so I'm trying to come back to where I was. Yes, things that we didn't know in the 70s. So we didn't know that there was a link between asthma and smoking. The funny thing is, about the time he stopped smoking, while he was still in hospital, I casually weaned myself off the Intel. I mean, I'm on a preventer now, but that's a lot of secondhand smoking when I was young. Because I was in that office and there wasn't a lot of flow through to get rid of the... we didn't have air conditioners in those days. So things we didn't know about sun and tanning and how it's actually not very good for you. And we used to try and tan, and people would wear terry-toweling hats. Well, men would wear terry-toweling hats, and they came to about here. So they protected very little of your face. So the brim was about that long. That's the size of my glasses. That's actually not very long. Maybe a little bit longer than that, but not much. And we didn't use sunscreen. We didn't use sunblock. We used tanning lotions and things like that to try and get a better tan. We didn't see the link between that and cancer. That came later. Oh, excuse me. And those of us who did a lot of tanning, which is not really me, I burnt a lot, but not because I was trying. We're going to have trouble later on. Many people have had skin cancers because we tried to tan when we were young. Things we didn't know in the 70s. Yeah, so anyway, things we didn't know. So my hat nowadays, I love my hat. It's got a really broad brim. Comes out to about here, so it really shades my face, my eyes, a lot of my nose, but not all of it, because I've got a big nose. And I didn't bring my sun hat in to show you. It's also got this Legionnaire's hat flap at the back. So back when I was at school, back in the dark old days, before the dinosaurs, you didn't have a hat. I mean, before I started, they had a hat, but it was more for wearing between school and home and school, and of course it was phased out when I got to it. So, especially at high school, everything was different at high school, secondary school. So I will come back to the book in a moment. And so we didn't have hats to play outside. It wasn't, oh, you bring your hat or you don't go outside. It was just, you go outside, you get some sunshine. So you burn a bit. You deal with it. Now, everyone, it's at primary school, if you don't have a hat, you can't play outside. And my hat is very similar to some of the children's. It took me 6 months to find that hat. Legionnaire's flap comes down past my shoulders, so it protects me here. Sometimes parts of my ears are not protected, but mostly it is very good. Good broad brim comes out to. So not that, but more like, actually my fingers aren't big enough to do the brim. I wish I'd thought to bring it in for this video. Although the terry-toweling hat is quite cute. I wonder if they're collectible. I think we have one on the premises. Okay, so here she mentions, page 127, I wrote it down. I'm just coming back to the book, because there's lots of things we didn't know in the 70s that we know now that we should not have done. 127, Left Hand of Darkness. Okay, so Barbara. That's right, I'm looking at the cane now. Okay, so I'm not even certain this book, whose point of view this book is from. I really can't tell you. But anyway, there are books mentioned in here. The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le You really need to read that. It's brilliant. It is brilliant. I've read it in my childhood and again as an adult, and it's better as an adult. I should do a piece to camera about that as well. The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Now, I've read Doris Lessing before. She's also really good. Sylvia Plath I have issues with because she mostly wrote poetry, and I seriously can't get into poetry. I really, really tried at uni. I got through my unit that was about poetry. Thank you to all my classmates for your help. But Sylvia Plath is a very renowned poet, and The Bell Jar is one of her most popular books, I think. And then we get to The Feminine Mystique and The Female Eunuch. One or both of those was written by Germaine Greer, who is a very well-known feminist. My dad used to talk about Germaine Greer, and I will not tell you the story because, first of all, I think it's not true, and second of all, I don't like it. But if I believe him, then he was in the same classes at uni, or some of the same classes as Germaine Greer, which I find really hard to believe because my dad was doing dentistry. So I think she's a bit younger than he was. Dad was in the war. No, he wasn't quite in the war. He got accepted into the army for World War II, and he got put into the dental corps, which I found absolutely hysterical because apparently the first sight of blood, he fainted. He's in the dental corps. Great. Okay. Cane toads. Things that we didn't know back then. We had some insect in the sugar cane, and the thinking was, let's bring in cane toads from whatever country, a country where they have natural predators. Let's bring them in and they will take care of the insects for us. Wrong. Brimming over with wrong ability. They did not take care of the insects. They ate everything and anything, and they multiplied because they have no natural predators here, and they multiplied at disastrous rates and had slowly, carefully working their way down the country. I'm pretty certain I heard that they might be in New South Wales, so northern New South Wales, and that's a long way for an animal to go. And they have poisonous glands on their skin, so nothing eats them here. It's like, why bring them in? Surely they could have done some research first. Okay, I'm coming back to this book, and then I'm going to stop talking about what we didn't know in the 70s. It's a book I struggled to put down. I've seriously struggled to put down. That's 2 books in a row I struggled to put down. I would say I'm a little short on sleep. And the current book I'm reading, which I don't have to hand, is another one. It's not quite as readable, but it's still good. I think Maryrose Cuskelly is from Queensland. Anyway, good book. A little bit dark in what it presents, because, you know, there's a girl gone missing, a teenage girl. And there's all this attendant racism and sexism that was prominent in the 70s, which I actually quite remember some of it. There was other stuff. The sugar crush is underway and the cane must be burned. Okay, there's a school teacher who is trying to educate the years 11 and 12 about modern things, such as learning to think for yourselves. Anyway, what I did like, though, no idea why I've written this. I'm not going to go back and look. Words, there are words in here which are typical Australianisms, typical Aussie slang. Billy-o, so go like Billy-o, in other words, go really fast. That's the only one I've written down that I remember, but yeah. If you like a dark book but not too dark, if you like a book that can make you laugh in spots, if you like a book that shows you what it would have probably been like in the 1970s in the sugarcane fields in Queensland, that will teach you a bit about blackbirding. Not so much. I read a book recently, which I don't have in my hand, which is much more historical and talks, it's someone's wife. I'll get round to it. The missionary's wife, and I can't remember who it's by. That talks a lot about blackbirding and the devastation of it and why it's bad. And so this is some decades later, probably about 10 decades later, so 100 years, we see and we understand a bit more about blackbirding. What I would like is something in between, from their own point of view, from the point of view of someone who has been stolen from the Vanuatu and brought to Queensland and made to work here in the cane fields. I'd like it from that point of view. Historical fiction. Yep, I'd like that. So anyway, excellent book. Good on you, Maryrose. On my blog, I say always use the author's surname. Why am I doing this now? Using the first name. Okay, what this also includes is the first chapter of her new book, The Campers. And when I say her new book, this one was only published in 2022, although this edition was published in 2023. Okay, so she's already sold a lot of her book, a lot of copies of her book in 2022. So this is an edition. Okay, enough. It's almost 30 minutes, and I've digressed a lot of times. Subscribe down below or don't. It's your choice, and I'll talk to you on another night when I can talk better. Bye.